Welcome dear participants. In this module, we will discuss Oculesics or different aspects related with the language of eyes. Eyes are the most expressive part of our body. Oculesics refers to the study of the use of eyes in our communication. Eyes have often been the focus of our literary interpretation of emotions also. They have been termed as windows to our souls. There are various idioms in every language which are related with the eyes. For example, making eyes, eagle eyes, shifty eyes, etc. Eyes communicate, and sometimes you would find that the communication which is done through eyes is the most authentic one. Our communication through eyes goes beyond the primary function of receiving and transmitting visual stimuli to the brain. Sometimes you would find that we try to pass on a particular emotion through our smiles, etc., but eyes communicate the truth of the emotions. Oculesics help us to understand what is the level of comprehension of a particular topic. In any interaction, what is the level of our empathy which we have towards the content which is being passed on. Eyes also help us to get the immediate feedback on the basis of whatever we are saying. They also help us to understand whether a communication is to be started or when it is the time to end our communication. At the same time, we find that eyes communicate a certain sense of trustworthiness. A positive eye contact is related with credibility, honesty, trustworthiness, and it also shows a certain level of interest. Although eye contact and facial expressions are often linked together, we have found that eyes can also communicate message which is independent of any other facial expression. As we have discussed in the context of proxemics also, the significance of cultural interpretation of our gaze and eye contact is also important. For example, up till very recently in Japan, listeners were taught to focus on the neck of the speaker and avoid a direct eye contact because they wanted to pay respect to the speaker. The same was followed in conventional Chinese culture also, in Indonesia, in countries of the Middle East also. Whereas in the US and in Northern Europe, listeners are encouraged to look directly into the eyes of the speaker because this direct eye contact is considered to be a sign of confidence and openness. If the interpretations in nature are not consistent amongst different cultures, we find that the differences of religions and differences within socio-economic background are also important. However, it has also been seen in world politics also that a misinterpretation of Oculesics can lead to interesting confusions. And I would recall something which belongs to the decade of 1970s. It was perhaps around this time that the US economy was trying to reach the Chinese people, and China also was eager to shed this image of being a country behind an iron curtain. It so happened that a high powered American delegation, which consisted of their senators and business leaders, was sent to China to finalize certain business deals. However, after about 2 days of spending in Beijing, the American delegation gave the feedback that they do not find the Chinese to be trustworthy people. It went against the policies of both countries. So, immediately the US president sent his communication consultant Rosa Myers to China in order to find out the reason behind it. The consultant found out that it is because of the lack of eye contact that the American delegation has reached this conclusion. Chinese did not maintain a direct eye-to-eye contact because they wanted to pay certain respect to the American delegation. And when the American delegates found that the Chinese are not looking at them, they simply felt that they are trying to hide something, and therefore they did not have any trust in them. There are certain dominant interpretations in every culture also. However, most of the times when I would be talking about the interpretations of our eye contact, I would refer to the dominant interpretations which we have in our country right now. From the perspective of an Indian who has been taught in a Western pattern of schooling and is also working in an organization where a Western oriented culture is dominant, we find that the interpretations of eye contact would be talked about in this context. This is by far not the only interpretation. This is also not the universally accepted interpretation, but this is the point of reference which I wanted to clarify at this point. There is a very interesting phrase which we come across, that we should listen through eyes, because if we are listening to a person with our eyes averted, the other person feels that we are not interested either in the person or the contact. So, we can understand that our direct eye contact signals our attitudes and thoughts. It also regulates conversation by providing feedback, etc. And at the same time, it also gives cues of dominance and power relationship. When we meet a person for the first time, then we quickly glance at a person, and on the basis of what we see, we make an immediate judgment on the basis of these cues. At the same time, once the dialogue begins, we find that most of these cues and signals are either reinforced or negated by our eye contact, because it is through our mutual eye contact and the way we manage our gaze that we can indicate our awareness, our willingness to participate in any discussion, etc. And at the same time, it also signifies a particular sign of respect. Talking to a person with an avoidance of eye contact passes on negative connotations. This video is a very interesting illustration of the significance of eye contact.
Very good man.
Thank you,
Very
guys.
good man.
But is it all genuine? We spoke to body language expert
bad
Tanya
point about this, though,
Ryman.
is neither one of them really makes eye contact. So you'll notice that Trump is looking down and Obama is looking down. So they give that mutual respect of a handshake, but they don't give that mutual respect of the eye contact. And the eye contact is way more important than the handshake.
Here we find that with the help of their language as well as with the help of the handshake, these two political giants are trying to pass on a sense of mutual respect. But it is the absence of eye contact which gives us the truth of the picture. However, it is the absence of the eye contact which is noticeable. Eye contact is gaze which is directed towards another person, and gaze is directly looking at any person, object, direction, etc. Whenever we talk to people, either in a dyadic situation or in a small group situation, we find that simultaneous and immediate eye contact is normally there. When two people are talking in a casual manner, eye contact occurs about 61% of the time, about half of which is mutual eye contact, and people make eye contact 75% of the time while they are listening and 41% of the time while speaking. And that is why in one of the previous slides we have talked about that we should be able to listen through our eyes and not only through our ears. But the length of the gaze also varies. We will look at what are the different types of gazes, but in the context which we have decided upon, for how many seconds we can safely look into the eyes of the other person without changing it into an intimidating gaze. Researchers tell us that a normal, healthy and positive, confident gaze should not be more than 2 or 3 seconds. Let us say that there is an internal body clock which we have developed on the basis of our cultural conditioning and professional awareness, which alerts us to the limit when we try to cross it. So, when we look at different types of gaze, we have to look at the situation where there is an absolute absence of eye contact, a gaze which is shifty, looking here and there, then The gaze which is considered to be a normal eye contact, and the normal eye contact is also different in different contexts. For example, we have to differentiate between the normal gaze or normal eye contact at the workplace, in social situations and in intimate relationships. Let us look at the definitions and connotations of normal workplace or business gaze. As you can make out by looking at the picture on the right hand side corner, that the gaze is focused on the forehead and eyes. The impression which we want to pass on is that of mutual interest and a professional intensity. And at the same time, we want to avoid any offensive connotations. This gaze is immediate. The eye contact begins as soon as we interact with another person, and therefore you would find that in business transactions, in professional situations, the gaze has a certain importance, because our willingness as well as our honesty and trustworthiness and credibility would be partially decided on the basis of our eye contact. So, the business gaze should never go beneath the nose, and it should be focused on the forehead and eyes. The second type of a gaze is the social and the friendly gaze. It is also a non-threatening gaze, but it is slightly more relaxed in comparison to the business gaze. It is also brief. It takes into consideration the eye and the mouth normally. Very occasionally and very briefly, it can have a look towards the neck side also. So, this is a gaze which we reserve for those people with whom we are friendly. This is a gaze with which we socialize. So, here you would find that the focus is on the eyes and the mouth, because this is a time of social interaction and talks. The intimate gaze is intimate, and this type of a gaze which takes the other person in complete visual is crucial to our experiences of intimacy. It is also an invitation to communicate. It shows attraction. If one overdoes it, it can also be an intimidating gaze. This is also the gaze which is often abused by people who want to develop a particular type of a power play. It is also a way of keeping the attention of somebody. So, there is a very thin line which exists between intimidation and attraction, and we have to understand that the connotations of the intimacy are passed on only in non-professional situations. If we look at the direction of the gaze in right-handed people, we can try to make out in which direction they want to think. And this understanding is very helpful, particularly when we have to make presentations, or when we have to talk to people in a small group, or we want to persuade somebody to look at things from our perspective. If the gaze goes up for a right-handed person, it means that it is a visual thinking. For example, I might be thinking what color of a car I should purchase, or what was the color of a car I was traveling 2 weeks back. If it is a parallel gaze in a right-handed person, it means that it is dominated by the auditory thinking. I want to recollect the songs which I cherished as a young child. So, I am trying to recollect certain words, and then the gaze moves in this direction. If it is downward, then it is related with kinesthetic decisions. Either I am thinking about certain feelings, or I have to take a decision soon. It is also of two types. Let us look at certain other visuals to find out the significance of this gaze direction in right-handed people. Please note that this direction is valid only for those people who are right-handed. In the first photograph, we find that it is the visual memory which is dominant, and this can be found on the basis of this particular direction of a gaze. The person is recalling a picture. In the second, which is a parallel gaze, it is recalling a sound gaze. The third and the fourth photographs depict the gaze which is downwards. If the gaze is down towards the right hand side, the person might be recalling a feeling. Often you would come across this type of a gaze in those people who are about to take a decision. It may be a micro expression, but definitely this gaze is often there just before one is about to reach a decision. If the gaze direction is towards the left, then often we are talking to ourselves, we are telling ourselves about certain emotions, etc. This research was taken up for the first time by Grinder and Bendler. They developed it as a part of their neurolinguistic theories, and this understanding helps us to judge the truthfulness in our interaction with other people. It can be helpful in learning the motivation level of other people, and it can also help us to understand what is the stage of decision making. This particular video is an interesting commentary on the significance of eye contact.
We hold different pieces of information in different parts of our brain. And usually when we're thinking about a particular type of information, our eyes will go in one particular direction. Ask most people about a memory that they can visually recall in their brain, maybe a childhood memory when they were playing in the park with friends. They'll look up and to the left as they recall that memory. But if you ask people about linear things like data, statistics, ask them to add up numbers, they'll quite often look up and to the right. People, when they're being emotional, upset, their feeling channel is down here and to the right. Whereas we quite often see people when they're talking to themselves, they'll look down and to the left as they formulate an answer to something. There's also horizontal, which is your audio channel. If you are at home late at night, 3 o'clock in the morning, and you hear a noise outside, if it's the cats playing around with the bins or something that you know the sound of, you'll quite often look to the side, to the left, because this is your recall side. It's a sound you understand and you know. However, if it's a sound you don't understand and you don't know, you'll look to the right and try and work out what.
Eyes are an enabler when we talk about controlling the attention of the people. They are related with the learning curve primarily, and at the same time, they are the most significant tool we have of controlling the audience. It is said that in the learning curve, 83% is dependent on our sight, 11% on hearing, and 6% on other senses. In presentations, our retention is definitely more if it is an audio-video one. We are likely to retain almost as much as 50% of what a person has talked about. On the other hand, if it is only an audio presentation or discussion, then we retain perhaps about only 10% of the content which has been discussed. At the same time, if we look into the eyes of the people and try to hold a dialogue, then we are also able to hold their attention. This is also the reason behind a better retention of content in audio-video presentations. The intensity of gaze in eye contacts is also an important aspect. Our intense gaze is focused, it is of long duration, and normally it is not accompanied by casual or friendly body movements or facial expressions. Normally it is perceived to be hostile or angry or controlling or threatening or even doubting. So, intensity of gaze has to be understood coupled with other body linguistic signs to understand the true import of it. An attentive gaze is more or less as prolonged as the intense eye contact. However, it shows interest, friendliness and curiosity because it is relatively mild. It is attractive rather than intense when it is accompanied by other softer facial expressions and smiles and with more relaxed body movements. Soft and distracted eye contact is less prolonged. It is accompanied by relaxed and very friendly facial expressions. It is perceived as casual, friendly, warm, etc. A distracted eye contact is one which tends to frequently connect and disconnect, and moments of contact are brief and periods of disconnect are longer. It suggests either preoccupation, disagreement, aloofness, boredom. Whereas a soft eye contact suggests agreement, a distracted eye contact passes on negative connotations which have to be delved deeper further. In dyadic situations particularly, the avoidance of eye contact passes on negative connotations. In small group situations, we may come across an individual who wants to avoid eye contact and would not allow other people to catch his eyes very frequently. The shifty eye contact or an avoiding eye contact may be fleeting or infrequent or frequent and infrequent alternatively. It reflects negative emotions only. Either the person is trying to hide something or is being very nervous or may find the content very boring or is disgusted with the whole situation, etc. Cultural aspects in the avoidance of eye contact are also important, as we have already seen in our discussion of the situation which had emerged between the American and the Chinese delegation. So, in certain cultures we find that the eye contact is deliberately avoided because we want to pay respect to the speaker because of the social situation or because of the convention of the land. Staring, on the other hand, is an absolutely different affair. It is never a part of our professional setup. Looking someone in the eyes for a prolonged period may become creepy, and it is absolutely unprofessional. It can even become threatening and uncomfortable. Sometimes we would find that staring can also be a part of deception. A person may be trying to keep the gaze focused because the person wants to come across as a truthful and honest one, whereas in fact the person is a liar or a dishonest person. So, in order to pass on this false impact, the person can overdo, can overgaze, and may result in staring at another person. Sometimes it can also be related with simple curiosity. For example, a child is staring at phenomena for a long duration. However, we have to look at the cultural differences here. In a different mindset, an innocent looking at or a glaring can also be interpreted as improper or offensive. So, awareness of cultural differences as far as the interpretation of eye contact is concerned is important. Positive eye contact is important in our interaction with other people. A positive eye contact suggests a confident person. It also suggests a positive sense of self-worth. People are automatically drawn towards people who have a positive eye contact because it conveys self-assurance and confidence. Open and positive eye contact is associated with honesty, and on the other hand, a poor and shifty eye contact is associated with deceit and dishonesty. Sometimes we can try to write it off by saying that it is a very common and stereotypical association, but this is also the common understanding, and people often make their judgment on the basis of these stereotypical associations only. For example, amongst the salespeople, we find that open eye contact is a must. You would perhaps never like to deal with a salesperson who talks to you with averted eyes. In trial interviews, in the formation of the public opinion, etc., you would find that we tend to trust a person who has a positive eye contact. Studies have also shown us that sometimes we may not feel very confident in our heart, but at the same time we are able to manage a strong eye contact with others. So, people would perceive this is strong eye contact, and on the basis of this they would also attribute competence, confidence and social skills to us, even though we might not actually be possessing it. So, this finding that even those people who are not actually confident appear to be confident to others if they maintain a good and positive eye contact demonstrates that our conscious efforts to convey qualities usually are successful, or whether or not we actually possess these qualities. Studies tell us that often when people lie, they tend to overgaze, engaging in more eye contact than what is perceived to be normal in order to emphasize the trustworthiness. Intent on appearing honest, they tend to overgaze just as they often overdo avoidance of nervous gestures that people also associate with dishonesty. In this video, we can look at the significance of positive body language, particularly from the perspective of eye contact.
Cereal boxes with mascots making eye contact with consumers are purchased significantly more than those that do not. 80% of all patient complaints in hospitals mention a lack of eye contact between the doctor and the
This video also tells us about looking at the micro expressions of eyes and how we can understand whether a person is being honest or not.
Here, people who are telling the truth tend to be more forthcoming with information than liars who are naturally evasive. Freshman also says to look out for micro expressions, which are subtle facial cues that appear for only a split second. The 2008 study on the topic showed that people who are being deceptive about their emotions display inconsistent expressions and blink more often than those telling.
Role of pupils in eye contact is also important. We perhaps never have any control over our pupils. In given light conditions, pupils will either dilate or contract as our attitudes and as our moods change. When we feel excited, our pupils can dilate. The pupils can dilate up to 4 times their normal size. If we are angry and in a depressed mood, we have certain negativity, then our pupils contract to what is known as beady little eyes or snake eyes. In this photograph, we can look at the difference between a dilated pupil and a constricted pupil. The left eye has a dilated pupil and the right eye has a constricted pupil. Eckhart has commented that pupil dilates when we are interested in the person we are talking to or the object we are looking at. Several researches have also been conducted, and you can also conduct this small experiment. Check a friend's pupil size when you are talking to him or her about something interesting, and then change to a subject which is repulsive to them, and then you can find that the pupils suddenly contract. So pupils have a significant voice as far as understanding of eye contact is concerned. In this photograph, we can look at 2 eyes. In one, there is a constricted pupil, in the other, there is a dilated pupil. The constricted pupil suggests a boredom with what is happening around. On the other hand, a dilated pupil suggests interest as well as attraction. In this video also, we can look at certain important aspects which are related with our understanding of eye contact.
Well, one of the first signs of a nervous liar is fidgeting, so pay close attention. Are they shuffling their feet, or playing with their hair, or messing with their watch or clothing? All of these could be potential signs of deceit. Now, you've probably heard that liars tend to avoid eye contact, but did you know that dilated pupils can also be a sign? These are caused by increased tension and concentration, typically experienced when someone...
So, today we have discussed certain basic understandings of eye contact. We will continue this discussion in our next module too. Thank you.